Hey, Kevin, you got any guts?
Woo! Get some!
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Kasparian with you guys. We got news for you all, domestic, foreign, you name it, we got it. Two different stories on the assault on abortion rights. Unfortunately, we have that for you, and of course, we'll tell you how to fight back. So, good show ahead. Casper, what do you got?
Well, we begin with an update on a story we covered yesterday regarding university presidents and calls for them to be ousted from their positions. We know of one, Liz McGill, who has decided to resign, but that's not the case for the other two, so let's get into it. Despite fierce calls for her ouster, the Harvard Corporation, along with hundreds of faculty members at the Ivy League school, have decided to stand behind their president, Claudine Gay. Now, even a politically motivated attempt at getting her fired due to allegations of plagiarism didn't seem to work. And we'll give you the details on that in just a moment. But before we do, I think it's important to just refresh our memories in regard to why there are calls for Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard University, to step down. It all really began last week when the House Committee on Education and the Workforce held a hearing with university presidents coming from Harvard, from Penn, and also from MIT. They asked about student protests and about the notion that some of these protesters are engaging in anti-Semitic rhetoric that makes Jewish students at these institutions feel unsafe. And really what got the most attention was an exchange featuring Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who has never uttered a word against right-wingers who spew, anti-Jewish conspiracy theories like the Great Replacement theory or anything like that. But she did use this hearing as an opportunity to really make a name for herself. And so here's the moment that got a lot of attention, featuring Claudine Gay.
And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric when it
and is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So Dr. Gay was trying to give a nuanced answer in a world where nuance is increasingly rejected. And so since she didn't clearly say that calling for the genocide of Jews is unacceptable and we will investigate it, she specifically wanted to focus on when that rhetoric crosses over into actual harassment. And look, I would have preferred for her to be a lot clearer. There was a lot of legalese used in the way that these university presidents answered that question, and it did not bode well for them. And that's what led to calls for their resignation. And I want to also be clear that there is no evidence of students chanting about genociding Jewish people. There have been chants featuring them saying things like "from the river to the sea," which is interpreted by some as calling for the destruction of Israel. But I don't think that most students who engage in that rhetoric think that they're calling for the destruction of Israel or the elimination of Israel. They think that they're fighting for the rights of Palestinians who are currently being crushed in the Gaza Strip. So that's the background. Before I get to the latest details of what's occurred in this story, I wanted to give you an opportunity, Cenk, to weigh in.
Yeah, so now that they've launched this weapon of mass distraction, whoever their target is has to be eliminated. So they got the president of Penn to resign. Tremendous pressure from the alumni saying that they're going to pull hundreds of millions of dollars. How dare you? We love cancel culture. We hate free speech. Make sure you cancel anyone who disagrees with Israel, etc. And it worked. They eliminated her. The president of MIT is Jewish, so calling her anti-Semitic hasn't worked as well. That's why you're not seeing her name in the news at all. That's why they're focusing on the presidents of Penn and Harvard, because they're not Jewish. So that's how this hatchet job is executed. And later, when we give you the details of the so-called made-up plagiarism, I hate that we're even using that word because it's nothing but a lie. And so we'll explain that in a second. And I want to explain the phenomenon in a second. But in terms of this first part here, you have to understand Stefanik used to be what was considered a moderate Republican, mainly a corporate Republican, switched over to MAGA when she saw Trump's success and switched a lot of her positions. So she's a standard slimeball politician, doesn't have any core principles at all. So two can play at her theatrics. Donald Trump had dinner with Nick Fuentes and Kanye West, who were both saying that they were pro-Hitler and that and then the Nazis weren't so bad. Those are quotes they said themselves. And he had dinner with those two Nazis.
There were hearings about that, right?
Hey, no, at least Stefanik, are you going to do hearings about that? Donald Trump said there were very good people on the Nazi side in Charlottesville when they said the Jews will not replace us. And Donald Trump used a Hitler quote about poisoning the blood of our nation. So, is it right to support a candidate that supports Nazis? Is it right or not? Yes or no answer, at least Stefanik. Do you support Nazis? Because a guy that you support had dinner with Nazis, said Nazis were very good people, and used Nazi quotes. Yes or no, at least Stefanik? Yes or no? And that part is actually true. Whereas what she's doing is based on a hypothetical chant that didn't even happen.
Right.
So now one more thing about Stefanik. Right after these theatrics about how she cares so much about preventing genocide or chance of genocide before they even happen. Do you know that Stefanik then voted for genocide? She's among the people in the House who voted for $14 billion to Israel to continue the genocide of the Palestinian people. That is not hypothetical or theoretical at all. It's happening right now. And she said, please take the taxpayer money and send it over there so they could do what now today even Joe Biden is calling the indiscriminate killings of Palestinian civilians.
Even Joe Biden, if you could believe it. So with that background, I do want to add one extra layer of context because this is actually a really interesting and nuanced story, because one of the other reasons why these university presidents have become a target of the right wing is because of their implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that really began to be implemented in these institutions following the 2020 protests that happened in the summer, following George Floyd's murder by Derek Chauvin. And so I give you that context because the climate at these universities became a little more hostile toward free speech. And some professors, some students were punished for engaging in free speech. And so the real question is, okay, well, why were they so quick to act when there was offensive speech directed at other marginalized groups, and they're not, treating individuals who have offensive language toward Jewish students the same way? That's really another part or another layer to this story. Now, with all that said, obviously, huge calls, fierce calls for Claudine Gay to either step down or to be fired. But as I mentioned earlier, the Harvard Corporation stands behind her, and they've decided to put out a statement in support of her. So did hundreds of faculty members who signed on to a petition demanding that she remain in her position. And let's get to some of the other allegations here. Now, the Harvard Crimson, the student newspaper at Harvard, is reporting that the Harvard Corporation and Harvard's highest governing, which is Harvard's highest governing body, expresses confidence in her leadership. They will not remove her. Harvard President Claudine Gay is facing allegations of plagiarism, though. They mentioned that as well. After a report in the Washington Free Beacon on Monday and a Sunday post on Substack claims she plagiarized portions of 4 academic works over 24 years, including her 1997 PhD dissertation at Harvard. Now, this is very complicated, and for those who either believe or don't believe she engaged in plagiarism, I honestly think it's mixed. There are some areas where I do think that there is a case that can be made that she plagiarized, but there's a lot of nitpicking going on by people who very clearly are engaging in a political attack against her. And I think it's important to look at this with a sober eye. Now, members of the Harvard Corporation actually addressed the plagiarism claims today by reaffirming their support for Claudine Gay. The Harvard Corporation wrote that the university became aware in late October of allegations regarding 3 articles. So apparently there were some claims that she had plagiarized earlier, prior to this whole drama unfolding. At President Gay's request, the fellows promptly initiated an independent review by distinguished political scientists and conducted a review of her published work. On December 9th, the fellows reviewed the results, which revealed a few instances of inadequate citation.
Ooh.
While the analysis found no violation of Harvard's standards for research misconduct, President Gay is proactively requesting 4 corrections in 2 articles to insert citations and quotation marks that were omitted from the original publication. So that is a direct statement from the Harvard Corporation. Now, they did not specify which articles were found to contain improperly cited material, which they're now going to correct, I guess. But the allegations were further publicized, and this is where the political component comes in. They were further politicized by right-wing anti-woke activist Christopher Rufo. Now, in a post on X on Sunday night, he made it abundantly clear that him drawing attention to the plagiarism claims is politically motivated. I'm gonna read you exactly what he wrote. Real Chris Brunette, that's the reporter that he worked with, and I sat on the Claudine Gay plagiarism materials for the past week, waiting for the precise moment of maximum impact. The Harvard board is meeting tonight, and there are rumors that the plagiarism scandal could be the final nail in Gay's coffin.
There is no scandal.
So hold on. Pause. So that was on December 10th, that's when he posted it. Obviously, the update to the story is it appears that Harvard is standing behind Claudine Gay and they do not believe she's done anything wrong. The story could develop from this moment to whenever. I don't know if they're gonna find other examples of plagiarism that they think are more problematic, but the claim was amplified by Bill A. Ackman, an 88 who graduated from 88. He's a hedge fund CEO who has been a vocal critic of Gay and has called for her resignation. Ackman posted on X that he sent the allegations to a senior member of the Harvard faculty who found them to be credible. He did not identify a specific faculty member by name. And so the Free Beacon article mentions 4 specific works from Claudine Gay that they believe give examples of her engaging in plagiarism. A 1993 essay in Origins, a shared publication between the Ohio State University and Miami University, her 1997 PhD dissertation from her time as a graduate student at Harvard. That particular example I think is kind of funny because they claim that she lifted quotes or work from the very person who was her dissertation advisor.
Yeah, it's nonsense, 100% garbage, but I'm okay, keep going.
And also 2 papers that she wrote while she was a professor at Harvard in 2012 and in 2017. So the Crimson, according to their reporting, independently reviewed the published allegations, though some are minor, consisting of passages that are similar or identical to Gay's sources, lacking quotation marks but including citations. Others are more substantial, including some paragraphs and sentences nearly identical to other work and lacking citations. Some appear to violate Harvard's current policies around plagiarism and academic integrity. So I'm gonna give you one example, but I also wanna note that it's unclear what Harvard's code of conduct on plagiarism was at the time that she put this work out. So here's her.
Okay, before you do that, let me just explain. After she's done with this, these are all hatchet jobs.
It is a hatchet job.
Horse crap.
It's all
I'm going to explain why this is all garbage, a burning pile of total garbage. Go ahead.
Okay, but let me also say this, okay? It's clearly politically motivated, okay? The hatchet job is clear to me as well. But if there are specific, and hold on, Jake, listen to me for a second. If there are substantial examples of her engaging in plagiarism, it is a problem if she's the president of a university.
Yeah, I'll explain later. Just get through the BS first.
Okay, no, you go ahead, Jake. Go ahead and
it's garbage. It's garbage.
Engage in your rant. Go ahead.
So guys, here's what happens, okay? Once someone sticks their neck out and challenges the powerful, they then dig into their lives and they go, okay, we gotta find some transgression so we can invent a scandal. And they'll get some hack like Rufo and some rando at a rando place like Washington Free Beacon and a Substack account, okay, whatever the hell that is, okay? And they'll say, okay, this is just serious charges. And they'll repeat words like plagiarism 2,400 times. And all the headlines will say plagiarism, plagiarism. And then when you look into it, what did Harvard conclude? 4 inadequate citations. Jaywalking is a significantly higher crime, okay? That when the best you got is 4 inadequate citations, basically you're saying we dug and dug and dug to try to bury her and find one thing wrong in her life, but we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. So we got something where she left out quote marks, but put the citation in. We got a thing where she joined with another author. We got a thing where she quoted her own advisor. Sometimes in cases like this, because whenever they go after academics, their #1 hatchet job is plagiarism. Why plagiarism? Because it sounds so bad, right? And the average person doesn't understand plagiarism at all. And so they go, inadequate citations. And it makes it sound like, wow. It's nonsense, total. So sometimes on plagiarism charges, they'll say, when you look into the details, she quoted herself but didn't cite it. Oh, come on, guys, come on. So this is what I call needle in a haystack. So are they trying to represent the totality of her career, the haystack, or are they trying to find a needle in that haystack, pull it out and go, look at this needle. That's what she's about. That one time that she got a citation wrong. Fire her, fire her. And who's Bill Ackman? Bill Ackman is one of the worst people in the country. He's a hedge fund manager who bribes, campaign contributions to politicians, buys them off left and right, gives a ton of money to his alma mater. And when he heard this, he's like, well, no criticism of Israel ever, fire her. I mean, I'm worried about an inadequate citation from 1987. So I'm really concerned about her academic situation. Guys, when they find something this minor, that means, oh my God, she was squeaky clean. Oh, she led an immaculate life. I challenge any of you to go through this kind of process and have them come up with only 4 inadequate citations. That means you're pretty much an angel. So this is nothing but a hatchet job. It has 0 validity.
So Cenk, the reason why I get frustrated with you is because you're itching to engage in your rant so desperately that you don't even give me an opportunity to lay out all the facts before you engage in your rant, in which you undermine and minimize the evidence that I'm gonna show that shows that it's more than just the lack of citations 4 separate times.
Yeah, I'm not gonna engage in their hatchet jobs.
Look, listen.
No, that has no validity.
Okay, all right, fine, it has no validity. If your take is, I don't care if she engaged in any plagiarism because this is politically motivated, then just say it. But my point is, even though I believe it is politically motivated that they're going after her, if there are substantial examples of her engaging in plagiarism at a university where students get expelled when they engage in plagiarism, it's a problem.
But they already did the analysis, Anna. So now we're gonna do a double analysis on some jackass substacker who's obviously doing it for political reasons. And guess what? By the time that they reevaluate their second set of nonsense charges, she'll already be fired. And Bill Ackman will go, yes, I won again. Send in the bull BS reporters to find the real problems in her career.
They did an analysis of the first round of plagiarism allegations that came out in October. But a new round of allegations came out.
A new round.
Okay.
Look at that.
Right.
What a surprising twist. A new round of allegations. Let's see if we can find more inadequate citations. I don't care.
Just finish. Okay, then you don't care.
I don't care. I don't care.
Then
I don't care if you
about that.
No.
Be honest about the fact that you don't care.
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care.
That's fine.
If you found out, no, I don't care. Let me explain. Let me explain.
Okay.
If you found out that she committed a robbery in 1997, went into somebody's house, broke the door down, and stole their radio, I still wouldn't care, because you're trying to eliminate her because she said something you don't like. Don't go back into the past, find the tiniest little transgressions, and then we're gonna have a debate over this poor woman's life and over her career. No, I'm not going to engage with bad faith actors who have shown 1,000 times over that they're full of crap and they're looking to destroy people's lives. So no, let me be very clear. I have no interest in a debate about plagiarism from 20, 30 years ago. So-called. When the first round of plagiarism came up with no plagiarism, none. They were lying, and they're always lying. Oh, should we look into whether she jaywalked? I bet she did. Let's have a debate whether she jaywalked or not. I bet she crossed several streets without getting proper permission. She might have even once had a party past 10 p.m., might have violated a noise ordinance. Let's engage in, is she guilty of the noise ordinance? I might be guilty of a noise ordinance now. No, hatchet jobs, no interest. You're right, Anna. Even if they found it and they're like, this one doesn't have any citation at all. Oh.
All right,
okay.
I'm done. We're wrapping this story up. We're taking a break. We'll come back and hopefully we'll calm down a little bit so we can actually do our jobs appropriately.
The job appropriately is this story has zero validity.
Right.
And do not fire that poor woman because some donor who's rich says, no, I'm gonna run Harvard. No one's allowed to disagree with my political opinions. Okay, if that's what Harvard is, which apparently that's what Penn is, I'm humiliated that I went to Penn. They fired her over that? They fired her over that because the donors didn't want her to be honest and tell what the actual policy of the school was on a hypothetical chance that didn't even happen. And those same donors, by the way, very, very likely donating to the politicians who voted for genocide of the Palestinian people because their lives don't matter. But we're discussing citations as 18,000 people have been butchered in Gaza. That's a weapon of mass distraction.
All right, it's more than citations. I'm sorry that I couldn't give you guys the information, but please read.
But go to Substack. I'm sure they have a lot of it.
Read the Harvard Crimson, please, so you'll understand where the real allegations lie. We're gonna take a break.
There are no real allegations.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the members. Gonzo says, Cenk, we're all here for your rage, but you gotta let Anna speak. We're here for that too. I know, I'm guilty. I'm sorry, I should have let her finish, I know. But I get so mad. I get so mad when they purposely go to ruin someone's life. We don't, in the old days, the establishment would do physical assassinations. Now they do character assassinations. So when they go to do a character assassination, I don't want to help them hold the gun, okay? So I got emotional about it, yes. So I'm sick of their character assassinations. And I want you to understand how it works. They always target someone individually. They always go looking for the needle, and they always make it seem like the needle is the haystack. And then they create fake controversies. All they need is the headlines. They don't need you to read the actual details. And then even if and you think you can't find something wrong in someone's life? Every one of you has some 10, 20 different things you did wrong.
My job, Cenk, is to give the audience the details, the facts, the foundation of the story, and then just let me do that. and then do whatever you're gonna do, okay? But it bothers me when we finish a story and I feel like I haven't done my job in giving the audience the details, okay? The facts of what's really going on. The actual details of the allegations at play. Anyway, whatever, it is what it is. It is what it is.
No,
it is what it is, I wanna move on.
No, look, we should have discussed it earlier and I should have been clearer about it. Anna is right that in the middle of that story, I should have let her finish, of course. But we should have discussed it earlier and I should have insisted that we not engage in firing the bullets, okay? So the debate already buries her. A fake debate is just as good as a real debate. Because it's all about PR. It's all about everybody saying plagiarism 200 times, whether it's justified or not justified. Okay, sorry. Jenks left tricep of fury says, I can feel a fight between mom and dad starting. Yes. By the way, we're humans. Yes, we sometimes in the middle of a story I got emotional in that case and things, and we have a real conversation.
If you want to call that a conversation.
Okay, whatever we call it. Shadows writes in, weapons of mass distraction. Love that one, Jenkins, a keeper for sure. Old Turk says, I'm curious about Jenk's take on the alternative phrasing, from the river to the sea, Israel, Palestine will be free. Neither can be genocided if both are free. I understand, don't do it, don't do it. I go through this 100 times. It's gonna be used against you. And a lot of people view it as a call to genocide. So even if you put the second part in, they're not gonna hear it. They're gonna hear the from the river to the sea part, and they're gonna think you're trying to kill them, and they're gonna hate you forever. And they're gonna hate Palestinians forever. They're gonna use it against Palestinians. But I'm trying to give political advice, but nobody wants to hear it. Oh no, I'd rather do something that's counterproductive because it makes me feel better. All right, back on TYT. Cenk, Anna, Tandil, Erson, Kevin Hamlin, they just joined, and Jacob Londono gifted 5 Young Turks memberships. I'm gonna apologize one more time. I cut Anna off there. I shouldn't have done it. I got emotional about it. I don't regret anything I've said, but I regret that I didn't let her finish so that you guys can get the full story. All right, more news.
All right, let's move on to Trump's legal problems. Special counsel Jack Smith is dialing up his prosecution of former President Donald Trump in the federal election interference case specifically. Now, there are 2 major updates worth talking about. First, he is getting the United States Supreme Court involved, and he plans to use Trump's own cell phone data as evidence against him in the election interference case. Now, Trump was indicted back in August for alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election, and he is facing several charges, including conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. Now, with that said, special counsel Jack Smith plans to call an expert witness who has extracted and processed data from the phones of the former president and another unnamed person. So we don't know what the evidence is exactly, but obviously having access to Donald Trump's cell phone data could prove to be a bombshell, could be damning. But again, we don't know, and I think it would be a mistake to think that this is the smoking gun, considering we don't know exactly what that evidence is. But with that said, what would the data seek to prove? According to Axios, the witness would determine the usages of the phones during the post-2020 election period, including on and around January 6th. So what was he doing with his phone? Who was he messaging? Who was he talking to? I think that's definitely relevant on January 6th in particular. That also includes the periods of time when the Twitter app was open on Trump's phone on the day the Capitol riot took place, so obviously on January 6th. So in other news, by the way, related to this, he is appealing to, Jack Smith is, the United States Supreme Court to get a final word, a final say on whether Donald Trump is in fact protected by executive privilege. Does he have immunity that would protect him from some elements of this prosecution? So this case presents a fundamental question at the heart of our democracy, whether a former president is absolutely immune from federal prosecution for crimes committed while in office, Smith wrote in the Monday filing. Now, part of the reason why he's doing this is because the Trump defense team is essentially trying to stall these proceedings by working through the court system to argue that Donald Trump is protected by presidential privilege, executive privilege. Smith added in his filing that it is of imperative public importance that respondents' claims of immunity be solved by this court and that respondents' trial proceed as promptly as possible if his claim of immunity is rejected. So what he's trying to do is fast track this process. Okay, let's not work through the courts. Let's have the Supreme Court weigh in and give a final say on this matter. And I think that that's a good move, especially considering some confirmation in regard to what Trump's legal team is doing here. Trump's legal team last week requested a stay on all court proceedings in the 2020 election case, which is currently scheduled to go on trial on March 4th. The former president's request for a stay came after US District Judge Tanya Chutkin, who is overseeing the case, rejected Trump's arguments that he has immunity from the indictment. So again, he wants to fast track this and ensure that it doesn't wait until after the 2024 presidential election takes place.
Yeah, so let's tackle the issues one by one. The cell phone, it could potentially have important information on there, but I'm gonna tell you ahead of time, I doubt it. So here's why. If he was talking to the Oath Keepers or the Proud Boys leaders and directing what they do on January 6th, that could be very, very damaging. So that would be very real. But they've already gone to court, they've already lost, they're already in prison. I'd be surprised if there was some secret information they were holding on to on a call between them and Donald Trump, and that they didn't use it in their defense, etc., when they were facing long prison sentences. So, okay, if he's got that, that's very interesting. If they're like, did you know that instead of calling the National Guard and making sure they got Mike Pence to safety, he was on Twitter? Yeah, we did know that. Yeah, of course he was. And he was watching TV all day. Did you know that he called Kevin McCarthy and other Republican leaders? Yeah, we already know that. So right now, I don't know what the information he has is, but I do know that mainstream media loves to hyperventilate about this stuff. Every single development is breaking news, shocking development, bombshell. Well, how come he's walking free as a daisy? You guys claim that you had him 128 times. So far, that part to me is a nothing burger. I hope he's got something real in there, but we don't know. Okay, now the second part about going to the Supreme Court to make sure that they litigate the immunity issue is super important. I'm glad that they expedited it to the Supreme Court. They do have to decide that, otherwise there's no point here, okay? But Republicans, be careful what you wish for. If they say he does have immunity, that means Joe Biden also has immunity. I know, you don't care, you're gonna put him in jail anyway, you don't think laws matter, everything is deep state, you don't need evidence. Okay, anyway, no time, no use in wasting breath on MAGA people who don't care about facts. So in this case, I don't know which way the Supreme Court's gonna go because it's 6-3 conservatives, but it would be kind of nuts to say that he has blanket immunity. That would mean that the president is above the law. Biden, Obama, Bush, Trump, it doesn't matter. And more importantly, future presidents. Go ahead and break the law all you like because the Supreme Court has given you immunity. That would be an outrageous decision, but you never know. So that's the most relevant part of the story to me.
All right, so let's move on to some other Trump-related legal troubles because, of course, there's also the story involving his mishandling of classified documents. So let's get to it.
One of the things that was so unusual here is as this former employee left his job a couple months after that FBI search before he becomes a crucial witness to investigators, Donald Trump gets his cell phone number, hadn't called him in quite some time, rarely called an employee like this, and calls him and asks him, why are you leaving? Why are you leaving working for me? Very possibly at that time knowing that this man could be a witness against him in this investigation.
CNN is now reporting that Trump and his allies repeatedly contacted a former Mar-a-Lago employee who just happened to be present for many of the suspicious goings-on while Donald Trump was mishandling classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. And he also happens to be an employee that special counsel Jack Smith is talking to as part of his investigation and probe into this matter. Now, it's possible that Trump and his allies, just wanted to maintain their friendly relationship with this former Mar-a-Lago employee. It's a possibility. But the timing of the communication and the messages being sent would suggest otherwise. So 3 months after the FBI had seized the classified records from Mar-a-Lago last August, the longtime employee of Donald Trump's decided to quit their job, quit his job. So 2 sources say that just within days, Donald Trump personally called this former employee on his cell phone to ask why he decided to leave. Why did you quit? At that point, the former employee said that he had gotten a different job and he decided to leave as a result of that. The employee told the former president that he had another business opportunity he wanted to pursue. The message later got back to the former employee that Trump thought he was a good man. So apparently that conversation pleased Trump to the point where he didn't really see this former employee as a threat in his prosecution in the mishandling of classified documents. So a little more information about this former employee who is unnamed for the moment. Now, he was allegedly a witness to several episodes special counsel Jack Smith has included in his federal criminal indictment of Donald Trump. He was also later subpoenaed by Jack Smith and his team. Now, he had moved several boxes, the former employee had moved several boxes for Trump and was also privy to conversations referenced in the indictment between Trump and his 2 co-defendants, Mar-a-Lago property manager Carlos de Oliveira and Trump's body man, Walt Nauta, putting the former employee in a unique group of Mar-a-Lago staffers who could be in a position to provide valuable information to investigators. This is why the story and the communications, the repeated communications and contacts that the former employee had with Donald Trump matters, because there is some question as to whether Trump was trying to witness tamper here, right? Trying to dissuade this former employee from cooperating in this investigation. Now here's CNN reporter Caitlin Polantz explaining what their communication to the former employee entailed.
Former employee at Mar-a-Lago. He was friends with Carlos de Oliveira, who later became charged in this case. And Carlos had said things to him about, hey, you should come to a golf tournament after he leaves working at the club. Trump would like to see you. I think Trump would really like to see you. He also talks to Carlos de Oliveira, and Carlos says something about perhaps you want to come back to your job. You could come back to your job at Mar-a-Lago if you wanted to. There's also some discussions between the 2 about the attorneys. Do they want to use attorneys that are within the Trump circles, as Carlos de Oliveira did? This former employee chose to use an attorney outside of the Trump circles. There's also an instance where he interacts with Walt Nauta, who later is charged, someone he has a less close relationship to, and Walt Nauta did tell him, you could come back to work at Mar-a-Lago if you wanted. That Nauta was also showing up at a gym with this man, as well as Carlos de Oliveira, which was unusual.
So that comment about the lawyers is particularly interesting. The ex-employee is using outside counsel, unaffiliated with Trump's team. That's very relevant here, which de Oliveira noted to him would be expensive. Like, hey, you might wanna use one of Trump's lawyers. If you go with your own counsel, independent of Trump's team, that could be costly. Meanwhile, public records show that Trump is paying for de Oliveira's lawyer, so that's also relevant here. He took on the lawyer after Nauta and others discussed his loyalty and whether he was good, according to the indictment. And there's more, one more graphic I want to read to you all, and then Cenk, please jump in. In another instance, John Rowley, who at the time was a top lawyer on Trump's defense team, left a voicemail for the former employee saying he knew he had received a grand jury subpoena to testify in the documents case. Rowley asked the employee to call him, but the employee never called back.
Okay, so there are 3 issues here. Number 1, are they in the real world witness tampering? trying to get that guy who has important information about how they wanted to tamper with the evidence in the boxes, etc., to play ball with their team, give him a lawyer so he doesn't have those expenses, give him his job back, offer some degree of money. And Trump calling him as extraordinary, them showing up at the gym out of the blue is extraordinary. Were they witness tampering? Of course they were. Every person who reads those facts knows that they were, right? Now, the second issue is, can you prove it in a court of law? Well, that one's much more difficult because they can say whether, like, there's a difference between did O.J. Simpson actually kill those two people, and can you prove it beyond a reasonable doubt in a courtroom where the lawyers come in and go, yeah, but what about this and what about that? But the gloves don't fit, and how about the shoes, etc. Right? So when the lawyers get into this one, they're gonna say, well, I mean, he could have been calling because he was such a star employee and he wanted him back. And the lawyer could have been calling him because he was really concerned about him and wanted to see if he wanted free legal help. So they could do all of that, and then being able to prove it is a 50-50 proposition. So I'm being honest with you guys. Everybody, usually says no, either this or that, which leads me to the third point that's involved here. Look, very roughly, the 40% of the country that's Democrats are going to look at that and go guilty, and they're not even going to do the analysis that I just did. They're just going to say, oh, he called a witness tampering. I hate him. It's over. 40% of the country that's MAGA or right wing or Republican, these are very rough numbers, are gonna look at that and go, even if Donald Trump came to him with an envelope stuffed with $100,000 or a suitcase with $100,000 and said, here, take this and don't testify against me, and they have it on videotape, they'd go, no, I don't believe it. So they're useless. You're never gonna convince them, right? No amount of evidence will ever be enough. But like I said, it's not like the Democrats are like combing through the evidence. They've already decided he's guilty on these things, right? So then the biggest question on this and everything else is the middle 20%. Are they paying attention enough to see this kind of, whether you prove it in a court of law or not, but common sense, court of public opinion, hey, is this guy trying to hide evidence or isn't he? Is he guilty or isn't he? Did he actually take these documents to do something terrible with them? Did he actually, in the other cases, come up with fake electors to do a coup plot, or didn't he? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how much that middle 20% are paying attention. Because if they were paying attention and they were open-minded, Donald Trump would be toast. In the cases overall, the evidence against him is overwhelming. So this is a tiny part of that, an important part of it if he's obviously trying to cover his tracks because he knows he did something wrong. But we don't know that, and I would love it if polling tried to find that 20% and ask them, do you care? Because it might not be 20, it might be 3% or 5% who care whether he did it or not. There's already polling that shows a giant chunk of the country says, I don't care if he's convicted on all counts. I don't care, I'm voting for him. So that's the question at hand, and that one we're not gonna know until election day.
Going back to the possibility that he's engaging in witness tampering here, it's not the first time that Trump has been accused of basically intimidating those who might make allegations against him. I remember when the hush money payment scandal was really heating up. Stormy Daniels, who was one of the women that he paid hush money payments to, came out and said that one of his allies had reached out to her to intimidate her. She said, quote, I was in a parking lot going to a fitness class with my infant daughter, taking, the seats facing backwards and the back seat diaper bag, getting all of the stuff out. And a guy walked up, excuse me, walked up on me and said to me, leave Trump alone, forget the story. And then he leaned around and looked at my daughter and said, that's a beautiful little girl. It'd be a shame if something happened to her mom. So look, I remember that allegation, and when this recent story came out about the ex-Mar-a-lago employee, I couldn't help but think about the claims that Stormy Daniels had made at the time. So that history, I think, is relevant. If he is witness tampering, there should be efforts made to protect the potential witnesses in this case, because any act of intimidation obviously not only jeopardizes the case and the investigation. I would hate for people to feel afraid to cooperate with this investigation.
Look, we've covered this different stories about Trump now hundreds of times, where he acts like a mob boss and he's so shame if something should happen to your mom, is a very standard Donald Trump, thug line that he either himself or his associates deliver. He does witness intimidation, witness tampering, obstruction of justice. He does it on a regular basis. He never cooperates with law enforcement. The FBI says give the documents back. He makes the Oliveira and Nauta hide them. He's a lifelong criminal. We've now discussed hundreds of, now, to be fair, on the crimes that he's violated, including hiring undocumented immigrants for his properties, violating codes, tax fraud, you name it, dozens of laws that he has broken throughout his career and never had any consequences, because the elites never have any consequences. Now he's crying his eyes out because he's the first. He's like, well, I'm an elite, I shouldn't be held to account for the law. That's for the average man. I can't believe I'm not above the law. But look, guys, just look at that one case of threatening Stormy Daniels and doing that with a kid, right? Oh, it's a shame what happened to your mom. If you told me that about a random Democrat, let's say there was an open primary and JB Pritzker is running, and I know some good things and bad things about him, and I found out that he had somebody do that, I'd say I'm done with him, okay? I'm not gonna vote for a thug who goes around threatening people and their kids, right? But MAGA doesn't view it that way. MAGA likes that he's a thug. And so they're immovable. They're an immovable object. The question is, are independents going to see all of this, and are they going to care? That's the question that's going to determine whether we have a democracy or not after 2024.
All right, when we come back from the break, we have an unbelievably cruel story out of Texas where a woman with a non-viable fetus was denied an abortion even though her own health and life was in jeopardy. That and more coming up, don't miss it.
All right, member section. Misty writes in, thank you for that explanation on what happened to the college deans, Anna. We need to be aware of the regular attacks on higher education and free speech, including spurious attacks on the students. Trump's lady lumps wrote in, saying boycott Israel is anti-Semitism, question mark. These are all question marks. Saying from the river to the sea is anti-Semitism. Saying long live Gaza is anti-Semitism. But yet somehow wiping tens of thousands of Palestinians off the map is not considered anti-Semitism. Absolutely disgusting, anti-human, anti-First Amendment whiny babies that unironically support murdering babies. That is their opinion, and a lot of truth to it. As you guys know, I don't like the from the river to the sea chant, but other than that, it seems factual. Yvonne Year of the Dragon says, all things considered, I will say I love that Anna has the, let's say, cojones to tell her boss to cut the crap, and her boss owns it. It's uncomfortable, but it's obvious you guys respect each other regardless of anything else. Yeah, my respect for Anna is unshakable and not going to be affected by one disagreement. But thank you for writing that in. Anxiety Triangle said, just wanted to say that regardless of the awkward and justifiable rage on both sides, I still love my TYT family. Yeah,
I'm gonna read a comment. It's not a member. We don't do this. We usually don't read comments from random people who are watching the show, but this is from Maria Villa, because this is a common comment that I see in our chat that I need to address. So this is what she writes. Anna is auditioning for a mainstream media outlet job. Do you know that I've been offered mainstream media outlet jobs making 3, 4, 5 times more money than I'm making here? If I were a grifter, I wouldn't be working at TYT for 17 years straight. What matters to me is that you guys leave the show every day knowing all the details, as many facts of the story, so you can make up your mind about how you feel about it. I didn't even share my perspective on that story. I wanted to lay out the story and then share my perspective. I didn't get an opportunity to do that, okay? If disagreeing with me on an issue here and there automatically makes you dumb enough to think that I'm a grifter, then you just don't have the brain power to even absorb this show and the information that we're sharing with you. Sometimes we're gonna disagree. If I were a grifter, again, I wouldn't be here, okay? I'd be making millions working somewhere else.
Okay.
Let's move on. I'm so sick of the grifter comment. Come up with something a little more unique. Please, Maria, think for yourself. Come up with another accusation, because clearly that one doesn't hold any water at all. Unbelievable, man. Lazy, lazy criticism, so lazy.
Look, guys, there's no end to it, and you have to see it. You don't have to, but we're asking you to see it from our perspective too, that we get these nonsense charges nonstop. Because I don't agree that you should say from the river to the sea, which I think is problematic.
You're a grifter, obviously.
Tons of actual grifters are like, oh, I'm gonna be morally superior to him. And they're saying I'm anti-Palestinian. I present to you the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Is there a 1% chance that I'm anti-Palestinian? But people say that all the time because it makes them money and it brings them attention. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Moonlit Gaming, thank you for signing up a premium level that keeps prices low for everyone else. We appreciate you, and Gabby Mathis, thank you for gifting a membership. Anna.
All right, let's get to the next story.
In a first-of-its-kind case, the Texas Supreme Court temporarily blocking 31-year-old Kate Cox from obtaining an emergency abortion. Cox, a mother of two, filed the legal challenge at 20 weeks pregnant. Her doctor saying her fetus has virtually no chance of survival. They warn continuing to carry the pregnancy could jeopardize her health and future fertility.
There's no outcome here, that results in us taking home a healthy baby girl.
After the Texas Supreme Court temporarily blocked a lower court's ruling that would have allowed for Kate Cox to receive the emergency abortion of the non-viable fetus, they later decided, you know what, no, we're just going to block her from doing it permanently. Luckily, Kate Cox decided to travel outside of the state of Texas in order to get the emergency abortion she needed. And it is an incredibly tragic and cruel story, and a perfect example of what we've been arguing about in regard to these restrictive abortion laws in various red states. The exceptions for the life of the mother really mean nothing, because what it leads to is a situation in which the mother has to beg the courts to make her case to allow her to get the health care she needs if she is pregnant with a fetus that is putting her life in jeopardy. And that was certainly the case here. Not only was it putting her life in jeopardy, the fetus was non-viable, meaning it was not going to survive. Very unlikely she was gonna give birth to a live baby. And even if she did, the baby would be unlikely to live past a year and would have all sorts of very serious issues that would put her family in a torturous situation, just watching a newborn baby slowly but surely die. Okay, there was a 5% chance of survival for that fetus. And the way that this all went down is unbelievable. So the case, again, involves the 31-year-old woman from the Dallas area. She asked the Center for Reproductive Rights for legal help in obtaining the emergency abortion. She really wanted the baby. She's 20 weeks pregnant. She has 2 other children, happily married, and was devastated to find that the fetus had these issues. So the genetic condition is one that cannot sustain life, as Cox wrote in an op-ed in the Dallas Morning News. Almost all such pregnancies end in miscarriage or stillbirth. According to the Cleveland Clinic, babies who do survive often die prematurely within the first year. Cox's doctor also warned that carrying the pregnancy to term could jeopardize her health and future fertility, which really scared her because she wants to have more kids, including uterine rupture and hysterectomy, according to the lawsuit filed on her behalf. And what's particularly gross about all of this is that when the lower courts had issued their ruling allowing for her to get this emergency abortion, Ken Paxton got involved. Ken Paxton reached out to the hospitals that have admitting privilege in the state of Texas and threatened to prosecute them should they go through with the abortion. And then the state's Supreme Court got involved and eventually blocked it. But luckily, she made a decision before the Supreme Court handed down their final ruling to travel outside of the state and get the abortion she needed.
Okay, so in one point in the proceedings, Texas said the physicians should just decide on their own what procedure they're going to do, and then we'll adjudicate it later. Well, the doctors are reluctant to do that because do you know what the potential sentence is for violating this law in Texas? A life sentence, okay? So, and as it turned out, they brought it to the courts and the Texas Supreme Court said, no, brutalize that woman. You are not allowed to help her or save her life, okay? So if the doctor had performed the abortion in Texas, she might now be serving a life sentence or in jeopardy of serving a life sentence because that's who these monsters are. Now, I want you to be clear, that is not the voters of Texas. The voters of Texas have made the mistake of putting Republican politicians in, but they never had a ballot measure on this. The state of Texas never voted, and they probably never will vote because the Republicans know that whenever it's gone to a ballot measure in any state, including the most red states there are, Kentucky, Montana, etc., they always lose. Kansas, they lost overwhelmingly because the overwhelming majority of the country is pro-choice. And they do not want the government thugs putting doctors and moms into prisons because they disagreed with their interpretation of a religious text. So the American people and the people of Texas are actually very, very clear, and we've seen the polling. But the Republicans stand in your way and go, no, my religion is more important than your rights. I believe that government should be gigantic. It should prevent doctors from exercising good judgment. And by the way, in another case coming out of Texas, there were 5 women who sued, and one of them couldn't leave the state to get an abortion. So they made her keep the baby, and it caused her permanent physical damage.
In fact, I want to go to her testimony in that case because she talked about what she personally went through as a result of these abortion restrictions in the state of Texas. So it's difficult to hear. I want to give you that warning. Let's watch.
I had to give birth to an identical version of my daughter without a skull and without a brain. And I would have had to hold her until she died.
So that is now going to be a commonality among women who need emergency abortions in the state of Texas, because even when there is a medical necessity for that abortion, even when the woman's life is in jeopardy, even when we're dealing with a non-viable fetus, it is very likely that every branch of government in that state is going to intervene and prevent that woman from getting the reproductive health care she needs. Ken Paxton gets involved, the Attorney General of Texas, the right-wing Supreme Court in the state of Texas gets involved, and they block the ability of this woman, Kate Cox, from being able to get the abortion she needs. It's sick, and it shows you that the exceptions that they make in these restrictive abortion laws really aren't exceptions at all. Because again, you have to prove that you've been raped and the pregnancy was the result of rape. You have to plead your case in front of the courts that your life is in jeopardy due to this non-viable pregnancy. It's really sick.
Okay,
it really
here,
is.
In more details on this particular case. So Texas is saying you have to keep the baby inside of you until it dies. Now it's going to die inside you in the overwhelming majority of the cases, and the doctors know that, and the judges know that. They're like, we don't care. And that greatly endangers the woman's life because then infections happen, etc. Not only does it endanger their life, but it endangers their ability to have more kids. And this woman is saying, I already have 2 kids, I want more kids. Why do you think I got pregnant? I'm married, I'm trying to have my 3rd baby. And if you do this to me, I might never be able to have a baby again. So this is the pro-life position? No. Now this doesn't have anything to do with life. And we've now shown you hundreds of stories including Gaza, where babies are being killed left and right, pulled off of incubators because there's no oxygen, there's no power, there's no electricity. And the pro-life movement doesn't care at all. All those dead babies, they couldn't care 1%. They've never done anything about it, they've never protested, and that's not the only story. We've shown you all incredible number of stories where babies' lives are on the line. The pro-life movement never cares, never talks about it. This isn't about babies. This is about how to control women, and they don't like the women's movement, freedom movement. They liked it when women were subjugated, and this is, look here, I'm gonna give you one last example here. Unfortunately, the 13th Amendment has a clause that says there's no more slavery unless, of course, or involuntary servitude, unless, of course, someone's in prison, because then you're involuntarily locking them up. And Southern legislators saw that as a loophole. And so what they started doing was imprisoning black men at enormous rates so they could just go back to enslaving them. So the women's suffragette movement, et cetera, happened, women got rights, and the right-wing men hated that. And they have been trying to battle that this entire time. You know, women have had a right to vote in this country for only 100 years. That's it. It's relatively recent. We had to get an amendment to do that. And so they've been trying to claw it back so that they could go back to being subjugated. So now, oh, you got a baby that's gonna very likely die inside you and cause you permanent damage. We want you to keep that and cause all that damage because we're pro-life, because we care about babies. Yeah, do you? Because it certainly doesn't look like it.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back for the second hour of the show, we'll talk about some of the latest economic analysis that's come out. How much does it cost? How much do you need to make throughout your working lifetime in order to afford the so-called American dream? We'll get into that. We'll also talk a little bit about Joe Biden's press conference with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today. He is applying quite a bit of pressure to Congress to approve the supplemental military funding that would greatly benefit Ukraine. So we've got that and more coming up. Don't miss it.
Now I'm gonna do something very different here and read some one-star reviews of the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. The franchise said, pretty much it's like listening to a trash compactor. Someone else said, negative, anti-American propaganda. And others said, out of context, misquotes, typical leftists who are afraid to debate, just smear. These two would be perfect for CNN or MSLSD. Well, Donnie, you might have a point, because I feel like a trash compactor right now after taking in all those garbage reviews. But thanks for listening anyway. We are, in fact, unapologetically progressive. And if you're not ready for bold commentary, then we're not the show for you. On the Young Turks, we speak up about the issues that matter, and we want to make positive change happen. And now here's why we actually do the show. Mariel Morales said, found this podcast from the True Crime Podcast, Fruit Loops, and other great progressive podcasts. I've become an instant fan of the Young Turks. Great conversation, great takes, very well composed, factual podcast, very informative. Love to hear that. Z55 said, it's a joy to experience such awareness and intelligence from fascinating people. And Anna is gorgeous and brilliant. Apparently I'm just fascinating, but I'll take it. Paul for Progress said, news well delivered. Appreciate it. KOOK said, Democrats and Republicans are fair game for TYT. And if Anna or Cenk provide disinformation about anything, they will admit they made a mistake and correct it. We appreciate you noticing that we are honest. To people who actually listen to the substance of the show, thank you. Your listenership supports what we do. Leave a 5-star rating for the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. Let's take the ratings back from the trolls. Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique, exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members-only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got a dozen progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi, and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together. Times are tough in America. The cost of living is through the roof. But mainstream media doesn't talk about the stories that actually matter to your everyday life. At TYT, we cover the stories that corporate media wouldn't dare to talk about. But we need your support to do it. You can't put a price on fighting for positive change. So become a TYT member at a price that's right for you. So that way you get to pick the price. When you go to tyt.com/join, scroll down to the name your price option, and you can become a member at a price point that makes sense for you. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, more news.
Well, there's been some new analysis in regard to where Americans stand with their personal finances and how much money they need to make through their lifetime in order to afford the so-called American dream. Let's talk about it.
Do you think that the American dream is something that really is still attainable right now?
Well, I'm an optimist. I think the American dream is and will be even more attainable in the future.
Now, it's easy for a billionaire like Jeff Bezos to continue believing in the American dream and how allegedly attainable it is, but that solid middle-class lifestyle with a home, a family, 2 cars is becoming more and more out of reach for ordinary American workers. In fact, according to a recent analysis by the financial site Investopedia, you'd need to make a lifetime earnings of about $3.4 million to achieve the American dream. And that includes getting married, having 2 children, owning a home, having healthcare coverage, cars, education. But the average American worker actually makes, well, the median lifetime earnings for American workers happens to be 1.7 million rather than 3.4 million. So it shows you just how large that gap is when it comes to affording these things and doing so comfortably. So here's the actual breakdown according to Investopedia. They show how much it typically costs to afford certain facets of life. Some of these numbers I think are a little inflated, but let's go through it. So average cost of a wedding and engagement ring, $35,800. I don't think you necessarily need to spend that kind of money on a wedding or engagement ring.
But a lot of people spend way more.
They do, that is true. Average cost of a home with mortgage interest, $796,998. So that's the average cost. Most homes cost a lot more than that these days, which is incredibly unfortunate.
Well, you might live in an area where that seems like a high price, but in the cities, that is minuscule. Like at this point, you'd be lucky to get a 2-bedroom in Compton for that price.
I don't even think that exists at this point. Like that's how unbelievably unaffordable housing is in big cities. So yes, it's true of Los Angeles, but it's not just Los Angeles. Even in areas that were typically thought of as more affordable, places like Austin, for instance, housing prices are astronomical now. So it is becoming more and more of a problem, which emphasizes a point that I make often on this show. There is a lack of inventory. We need to build more housing, and the fact that we have Congress and local government really asleep at the wheel on this issue is incredibly frustrating. Median out-of-pocket with insurance cost of giving birth to 2 babies is $5,708. Average cost of raising 2 children till they're 18. $576,896. By the way, that doesn't include the cost of college. Lifetime cost of average family health insurance premium, almost $1 million, $934,752. So you get the point. Wages for the first time in a long time started to kind of tick up. But unfortunately, inflation blew up as well simultaneously due to a number of issues. There were supply chain issues, corporations price gouging, and all of that. And so even with the rise in wages, unfortunately, that rise did not keep up with inflation. And keep in mind, with this Investopedia analysis, these costs can be shared by a 2-income household, but there's also another issue at play right now where a giant portion of women who are having children are doing so when they're not married, when they don't have a devoted partner. And single moms have a difficult time affording everything on their own. A 2-income household makes this a little easier, but even in that situation, it's incredibly difficult for couples to pay for everything that they need to have a solid middle-class lifestyle.
Yeah, so in their calculations, they only put in 1 year of college. Again, the big cities, these numbers are way too low, not just on housing, raising 2 children, impossible for that number. From the age of 0 to 18 for 2 kids, you're gonna raise them on that number? On the big cities, it's not even close. It'd have to be at least 4 times that number. Right, so, but the overall point is clear, both on the amount of assets you need over your lifetime and on your income. We've got about half of what we need. So, and then the politicians go, what? Why isn't the status quo great? Why aren't you thrilled with Bidenomics? Why don't you just keep voting for us? Because the current situation is amazing, isn't it? No, everybody's in their own bubble. In Washington, yes, you guys make 4 times what the average guy makes, 10 times, 20 times. So yes, life is fantastic for you, but you're not the average person. And for the average person out here in the districts, no, life is not great, and the numbers absolutely positively prove it.
One other thing I wanted to bring up about this analysis is it shows you one of the prime reasons why couples are abstaining from having children, because they don't want to find themselves or dig themselves into a giant financial hole, knowing that it's unbelievably unaffordable to raise kids in America, and there's really no support system or social safety net to assist parents in raising their kids. And what I mean by that is, obviously you need a dual income household to make ends meet. So with both parents working, you need to pay for childcare, and childcare is also astronomical. And so my issue with the conservative solution to this low birth rate issue is that they would rather use force in outlawing abortion and reproductive rights rather than create an environment in which couples who do want to have kids, and I know of many couples who want to have kids, but they abstain because they don't feel that they can afford it. So if you create the kind of society that is supportive of families and people who want to have kids, people are gonna have kids. The problem is we don't live in that society currently.
Yeah, and my last comment is about what Bezos said. Look, we all want to be hopeful and believe that there's still opportunity in the American dream, and there is. And I don't want you to be pessimistic and think there's nothing that could be done. No, there is something that could be done, but is it significantly harder today than it was in previous generations? Yes, your eyes are not deceiving you. It is possible, but it is significantly harder. So the part that drives me crazy is when incredibly wealthy people like Jeff Bezos or politicians come and tell you, no, your eyes are lying to you. Don't believe them. Everything is great. And we don't have to change any of the laws. No, Bezos, if you want to create the American dream and opportunity for the next generation, yes, you have to change some of the laws because the laws have been rigged by the rich so that they can keep almost all the money. So that is why, for example, Amazon, that is worth over $1 trillion on some years, paid no taxes. So when you give me empty platitudes about opportunity in America, but you don't pay your damn taxes, you'll excuse me if I don't believe you. I think what you're saying is, I want to keep all $200 billion, and I don't want to change any of the laws, and I want to keep crushing you guys. But hey, work harder, maybe you'll have some opportunity. I would believe it if he then said, no, I'm now going to use my money to give campaign contributions to politicians to change the laws to make it fair, so that the average guy could have an opportunity and your kids could have an opportunity. Then I'd say, hey, I don't care that he's rich, that's great, he's using his money for good things. Is he doing that? No. Instead, he's doing propaganda on mainstream media and they love it. And they go out there and go, see, Bezos says there's the American dream still possible and he's super rich, so it must be true. No, we showed you the actual numbers.
All right, let's get back to some international news, sort of. There was a big meeting today, a big press conference featuring a world leader, and we should talk about it.
Welcome back. Thank you so much. Welcome back to the White House, to the Oval Office. And it's great to be at your side once again. We're going to stay at your side. You know, we stand at a real inflection point in history. I know you and I have talked about this, but the decisions we make now are going to determine the future for decades to come, particularly in Europe. This is one of those moments. Congress needs to pass a supplemental funding.
Today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Capitol Hill and the White House to plead for more assistance, more military aid to help defend his country against Russia's invasion. But it is seeming to be more and more unlikely that Congress will budge on this matter before the holiday recess. And so that's because Republicans have some conditions when it comes to approving the money. Remember, the House of Representatives at the moment has the Republicans controlling it. They have a slim majority, but a majority nonetheless. And so what they are really leaning toward is, we'll approve the money, but we want more funding for border security. Of the $110 billion or billion national security package, 61.4 billion would go toward Ukraine. This is the supplemental funding package that Biden is asking for, with about half to the US Defense Department to replenish weaponry it is supplying, and the other half for humanitarian assistance to help the Ukrainian government function with emergency responders, public works, and other operations. Now, the package includes funding for other efforts abroad, another $14 billion for Israel as it fights Hamas, if you want to word it that way, and $14 billion for US border security. Additional funds would go for national security needs in the Asia Pacific region. It also included some humanitarian aid for the Palestinians that are currently dealing with Israel's aerial bombardments and the high civilian death toll that's resulted from it. That package would include $100 million for humanitarian aid for Gazans. Now, Republicans still want more money for the border, though, and that's why Lindsey Graham, who loves war and has no problem with funding wars abroad, has kind of spoken out. He says to Volodymyr Zelensky, here's the problem, it's got nothing to do with you. Apparently for Republicans, it's got everything to do with the resources that they want for border security. And he's not the only one who doesn't see a way out anytime soon. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell suggested that it would be practically impossible for Congress to pass a national security supplemental aid package before January, because they're thinking about their holiday recess. They're not gonna, why are they even in Capitol Hill? Like, just go home. They're not working, they're not doing anything. They're probably fundraising and that's it. So they're not gonna be able to pass any bills. They're not gonna pass any funding, nothing until after the holiday recess.
Okay, I'm gonna say something that might surprise you in this story, and I'm gonna bring George Santos into it too in a second. First, let me start with less important things. Biden reaching over looks like one of those presidential robots in Disneyland, right? And Zelensky, we got it, brother, with the military outfit. It's now starting to look like a costume. Like, okay, so this wasn't the world's best photo op. Okay, that's a tiny, tiny point. Now let me move on to the substance. I think I agree with the Republicans here. So number one, I'm glad they blocked the $14 billion to Israel. At this point, everyone concedes. The New York Times and now even Joe Biden saying they've got to stop the indiscriminate killings of civilians in Gaza. So why are we sending $14 billion to do indiscriminate killings of civilians? That's not. I don't want a single dollar going into that. And look at the absurdity of that package in particular. $100 million for humanitarian aid, but $14 billion to kill them. So let's kill a whole bunch of them and wound 4 times as many. And then we'll send a tiny percentage of that as humanitarian aid after we drop bombs on their heads and kill their babies and grandmothers, okay? Yeah. So it's sick, and I'm happy that the Republicans voted it down. Now the Ukrainian aid, well, that one's complicated, but I've been in favor of helping Ukraine defend itself against Russia this entire time. Now we've reached the point in the war where the two sides are dug in, and it doesn't look like they're making much progress in one direction or another. Russia, unfortunately, controls about 20% of Ukraine, and I don't know what to do about it. But we're now absolutely dug in, and the Ukrainians' counteroffensive basically looks like it didn't work, and Russia doesn't seem like they can take it much more territory. So are we going to fund this for the next 2 years, 20 years? How long are we going to fund this trench warfare? It's a good question. I don't have a conclusion on it, okay? And then the Republicans are saying, hey, instead of sending it there, or along, by the way, the Republicans, don't get them wrong, they want to send it. They just want the border security first, okay? I don't want to send the part to Israel, and on Ukraine, I'm mixed. But the part where they say, hey, we should spend it on border security, I'm going to disagree with them on what they mean by border security. But yes, border security is important, and at least that would help the American people instead of sending more money abroad for more wars or more deaths.
Yeah.
So overall, I'm glad they blocked it.
Yeah, I largely agree with you. Especially in regard to how the border security money and resources would be spent, because one of the biggest issues we have right now is the giant number of asylum seekers who need to be processed through the court system. We don't have enough immigration judges to do that in a speedy manner. And so are we gonna hire more judges? Is any of the money gonna go toward that? In addition to securing the southern border, yes, okay, so I agree with you on that. The other thing I wanted to just make a point about is what you had to say about how the war is actually going in Ukraine, because I think for quite some time, the media coverage of that war kind of saw things through rose-colored glasses, really presented Ukraine as defeating Russia and holding strong. But some of the more recent reporting is mixed on that, okay? So I wanna give you a few excerpts from this New York Times piece where they write that the United States and its allies spent millions to send tanks and other armored vehicles to Ukraine and to train newly formed units on advanced military tactics. But despite Ukraine's push through the summer and into the fall, Russian forces have largely held on to the nearly 20% of the country they hold. American officials say that without a change in strategy, 2024 could be akin to 1916, the deadliest year of World War I, when thousands of young men lost their lives and battle lines changed very little. So, Republicans are saying, listen, we'll approve the funding for Ukraine, but we need to know what the exit strategy is here, right? So House Speaker Mike Johnson stated today that before the House Republicans approve any aid, they need to see detailed strategy for how Ukraine can defeat Russia. And I think that's a fair ask. I don't think it's right for us to just constantly send military aid, write blank checks, when there's really no strategy or plan in place to ensure that those resources are being utilized effectively. Final thing I'll say is, I can't help but admit that it's frustrating to see how quickly Biden is willing to hold these types of press conferences to apply pressure on Congress to get what he wants, which in this case is military funding. But when you think back at his alleged agenda, Build Back Better, for instance, which was meant to help the American people with things like affordable childcare, aid to individuals who have to take time off of work to take care of their elderly family members, all of those things that would have helped ordinary Americans. there was no press conference to apply pressure on members of Congress who were standing in the way of the passage of those bills or those provisions. And that, to me, is a symbol of what I think a lot of Americans are frustrated with Biden on, right? They feel that Biden likes to tout his economic policies, but they haven't felt the alleged benefits of those economic policies. At the same time, they see how he gets real active in applying pressure for military aid, but didn't show the same enthusiasm or apply the same pressure when it came to passing legislation that would have benefited the lives of ordinary Americans who are just barely getting by. So I had to mention that because the optics of that and the priorities of the Biden administration are very clear, and I don't think that they work to his favor.
Okay, my last two things are, one, I want to read a comment from a member that's, I think, excellent. And by the way, you could be a member by going to tyt.com/join or hitting the join button below. We like doing the show with you guys. Ashura Azumi wrote in, what happened to the money the Pentagon was given already? Try find that before you get any more. I love that. No, I vote no on, in fact, you swung me, brother, on Ukraine. Sorry, Pentagon, go find the money. You can't pass any audits. You say you don't know where $400 billion is. Good news, if you find the $400 billion, you'll be easily able to fund that Ukrainian war. So until you pass an audit, no to everything, okay? No, you can't steal $400 billion of our money. Go, I don't know where it is, and then ask for more money. So thank you to Ashura for making a great point. And then the point I wanted to make on Santos is, why do you think the Republicans kicked him out? They sent him home because they don't have anything more to do. Their majority went down from 4 to now 2 when Santos left because there was one other person. They don't need it for anything because they're not trying to get anything done. So that's why they have these debates and blocks and all this stuff.
Yeah, congressional hearings.
Congressional hearings about nonsense. It's all theatrics. They're not proposing a single thing on either side that would help your life.
And final detail to this story that I think is worth knowing about, Zelensky is not gonna go home empty-handed. Biden announced Tuesday that he approved an additional $200 million military aid package for Ukraine. So that would be in addition to the supplemental funding that he's asking for.
But hey, he found money for paid family leave and higher wages.
No, I mean that would help the American people.
Oh,
can't be bothered with that. Got to find a way to redistribute wealth from hardworking Americans who pay taxes to the defense contractors, because that's what this scam is really about. It's not about freedom. By the way, I watched the entire press conference with Zelensky right before the show started. You want to know what Biden was touting the entirety of the time, like entirety of the press conference? Freedom, freedom. We got to do this for freedom. And by the way, I do believe that it's important to protect the sovereignty and freedom of countries like Ukraine. What about the freedom of Palestinians who are currently being bombed on in the Gaza Strip? Does their freedom matter? I just can't stomach listening to Biden talk about freedom, considering what is currently going down in the Gaza Strip right now, in the West Bank right now, period. We gotta take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including how the largest pharmacy chains in the country are sharing your medical information with law enforcement, even when they don't have a warrant. Come right back.
Back on TYT during the social break here. Let's go to our members. I Wish a Dragon Wood wrote in, when I first started watching TYT, I was annoyed by Anna's saltiness, Jenk's fury, John and Brett's sarcasm, and just the commentary. I then became a member and stayed on for 5 years now because as annoyed as I was, it was the only place, and they capitalized only, the only place that I could find truth. 5 years later, I don't know what I would do without the salty, sarcastic fury of the TYT family. You are all awesome, and I am glad I stayed as a member. Thank you for having an open mind. Most importantly, thank you for caring about the truth. that you bared through it when you didn't love the commentary and the emotions, et cetera, and the passion. And we appreciate that you do now. But I love that quest for truth. And thank you for being a member, because guys, times for the entire industry are super tough. And that includes us, because when ad rates go down and there's less ads and we make less money from them, it's devastating. It's very hard to keep everyone here and continue to be a network without more members. So definitely help if you can. And by the way, you can do gifting, tyt.com/gift. And at tyt.com/join, you could also do donations. Tenage 714 wrote in, here's my honest take. When I don't always agree with TYT's opinions, I absolutely appreciate the journalistic reporting that Anna brings to the table. What corporate news refuses to do is to report all sides of an issue. Cerberus Dragon said, I've been working my entire life and all it got me was heart and kidney disease, outstanding debt, homeless for 2 years, mother having to move back to California so I wouldn't be homeless, and never having a social life whatsoever because any little money I do goes to my daughter. I'm always questioning if my life is worth continuing. Yay, the American dream. And that is super hard to hear, but it's important that people like us hear, the audience hears it, because you're never gonna get that on mainstream media. Nobody ever talks about the average person going through those struggles. It's all fancy people who are all incredibly wealthy and incredibly powerful, talking among themselves about what people on the cocktail circuit agree. Oh, everybody on the cocktail circuit agrees we should give more money to Israel to bomb Gaza, but not to the average American. Well, we don't agree. We want people like Cerberus Dragon to live a better life and really have a shot at the American dream. All right, on Twitch, Soul6 writes in, Cenk, my dad's a former Republican turned Democrat. He now works for 2 California state senators. I bought him a copy of your book for Christmas in the hopes that he'll read it and convey its message to those senators. Well, I love you for doing that, I appreciate you. tyt.com/justice to buy my book, and thank you for gifting it, that's amazing. Hassan's Dog Walker writes in, a life sentence for performing an abortion. People shoot up schools and don't get a life sentence. Unfortunately, that's true. They also wrote in, I live in Houston and rent has increased in Texas significantly in the past 6 years because of people coming from California and the upper East Coast. That's also true. KCDA 79 said, and the State Department failed a 6th audit, that's the Pentagon actually, and have botched funding to Ukraine before. Also true. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, more news.
So you might think that your personal medical information at these big chain pharmacies is protected under HIPAA laws, but it turns out that that's not the case. And in fact, some of these giant pharmacy chains, think CVS, Walgreens, will literally share your prescription history with law enforcement even when they don't have a warrant. And by the way, that does not violate HIPAA laws. So this was an investigation done by the Washington Post. This is a good example of excellent journalism, and it gives you a sense of the limitations of HIPAA laws, but more importantly, the limitations of these big chains that operate in pretty much every state. So though some of the pharmacy chains require their lawyers to review law enforcement requests, 3 of the largest, CVS Health, Kroger, and Rite Aid, with a combined 60,000 locations nationwide, say they allow pharmacy staff members to hand over customers' medical records in the store. So think about what this means. If you are living in a, let's say, red state that has banned abortion, and you decide to travel out of state to get the abortion pill, and you make the mistake, I guess, of getting the abortion pill from one of these big chains, if there's some suspicion that you did that and you go back to your red state, they can very easily, law enforcement can very easily access your medical records from those big chains because they also operate in your state. This is first of all, it's devastating for everyone. Everyone's health information should be protected. It should be private, okay? And that includes your, the pharmaceutical drugs that you're prescribed and the pharmaceutical drugs that you are given. But it's particularly like there's an extra layer of awful in this story when you consider how some of these states want to prosecute people who aid and abet a woman practicing her reproductive rights and getting an abortion.
Yeah, so I'm glad that they unearthed this, and credit to the Democrats for doing that, because this had been going on the whole time until they investigated it. So Javier Becerra should get a lot of credit among the other Democrats and the administration for realizing this. And now the pharmacies are saying, look, make us have to get reply only to a warrant. Because otherwise, the cops are gonna come in and say, I have a subpoena. They didn't go to the courts to get it. And what's a pharmacist supposed to say? No, I'm gonna be my own lawyer on behalf of CVS or whoever and decide to ignore what a cop says. It's not gonna happen. And they're not wrong about that, they're right about that, right? I wish they had their own internal policies to begin with, and of all of them, amazingly, Amazon does. And Amazon says, no, you need a warrant. And yes, Amazon now has everything, including a pharmacy. And so, but if you pass a law or you make it clear, at least at the executive level, that they need a warrant, that would be incredibly helpful. Because if you live in a red state, they are run by religious zealots who will chase you to the end of the earth to take away your rights and to try to stuff you into prison because they think big government should run your life instead of you and your doctor. And they don't mind sending their thugs anywhere to haunt you and to chase you down. So, but by the way, it's also not just about abortion, guys. We have tons of private information at the pharmacy. They should not be just turning that over to the cops willy-nilly.
Now, just a quick correction, because Javier Becerra doesn't deserve any credit yet. He might do something with this information and push to change the policies to protect our privacy. I won't hold my breath on that. He's the head of Health and Human Services, but the reason why he's involved in this story is because 3 members of Congress who actually want to change the laws sent a letter to Becerra explaining what's going on. And those members of Congress include Senator Ron Wyden, Representatives Pramila Jayapal, and Sarah Jacobs. So they're the ones who are raising a red flag on this issue and they want something to be done about it. Now, the members began investigating the practice after the Supreme Court's decision last year to end the constitutional right to an abortion. And again, as we know, pharmacies' records hold some of the most intimate details of their customers' personal lives, including medical conditions and the prescriptions they take for mental health and birth control. So nonetheless, in briefings, officials with America's 8 biggest pharmacy giants, Walgreens Boots Alliance, CVS, Walmart, Rite Aid, Kroger, Cigna, Optum Rx, and Amazon Pharmacy told congressional investigators that they required only a subpoena, not a warrant, to share these records. And as you know, a subpoena is much easier to get as opposed to a warrant from a judge where you have to make your case that this information is critical for an investigation. And believe it or not, handing over this information is technically allowed. It is not covered by HIPAA laws. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, regulates how health information is used and exchanged among covered entities such as hospitals and doctors' offices. But the law gives pharmacies leeway as to what legal standard they require before disclosing medical records to law enforcement. And officials with CVS, Kroger, and Rite Aid said they instruct their pharmacy staffs to just process law enforcement requests on the spot, saying the staff members face extreme pressure to immediately respond, the lawmakers' letter said.
Yeah, I just want to thank Anna for the correction. I reread it just now. Yes, the legislators sent the letter to Becerra. He hasn't done anything with it yet. So I hope he earns that credit one day, but he hasn't so far. But and I wanted to note that now that's 2 bills that Ron Wyden has, or 2 actions that he has taken that has been really positive. And so the fact that anyone in Congress is still trying to get something done positive for the American people is amazing. He also has a proposal about stopping hedge funds from buying our private homes, which is amazing. And Pramila Jayapal, I have criticized a lot in the past for how she handled negotiations, but a terrific job here. Guys, do not get biased into, I like this person, I don't like this person. Each action is its own and should be judged for that, and credit where credit is due. So thank you to Jayapal Wyden and Sarah Jacobs.
All right, we've got a clown show in the next segment featuring Tucker Carlson licking Donald Trump's boots. We'll also talk about the latest with George Santos's legal troubles if we have time. So come right back, we've got those stories and more.
Back on TYT, let's go to Super Chat. R. Stone writes in, hey, where's the study group looking into the impact of additional funding to foreign nations? They're asking for far more money than cannabis legalization, or fill in the blank on any domestic policy. And look, the reality is that actually if we gave humanitarian funding, it could be have amazing impact, as the Marshall Plan did when we rescued Germany and Japan after World War II, let alone Greece and Turkey. And I would suggest a Marshall Plan for Latin America, and that would make a giant difference on the immigration issue. But we never give, not never, that's not right. We give very few funding for humanitarian reasons. But if you got a war and you're looking to kill civilians, we've got plenty of money for that. Steve Pift says, I wonder how many women in Texas regret voting Republican in 2022 and 2020. Furthermore, I missed a detail concerning the 2 female justices in the Texas Supreme Court. So, well, that's the question I was asking them. So if in a ballot measure you would vote to keep your reproductive rights, and the Republicans aren't even letting you do that in the red states, well then vote them out. They're taking away your rights, you don't agree with that, it's a fundamental issue. It's not complicated. The Democratic Party is not God's gift to humanity. We've discussed all their issues. But if the Republicans are taking away your rights, of course you should vote them out.
I gotta say something real quick. Art Guy, my team just sent me a screenshot of the painting you did, and it made me emotional. Thank you so much, you're a wonderful person, and I'm so grateful that you are a supporter of the show. He did a painting of me and Charlie, and it made me, I'm very touched by it, so thank you. Okay, now get off me because I'm
okay. All right, let me go back to these comments. Kevin Hamlin says Republicans are happy to have a group of judges tell a woman she can't have an abortion to save her life, but will tell their constituents that socialized healthcare will lead to death panels. Yeah, healthcare that saves your life, no way. Laws that take away your life, of course. By the way, they're the pro-life party. Ha ha ha. EP says your true honesty is refreshing, deserves my support. Awkward back and forth disagreeing sometimes is worth the truth. Bangers and Trash Dragon says, Anna, I love your dedication to the facts of a story and your passion in the face of adversity. Your sense of humor is a killer as well.
Thank you.
Okay, that's very nice and also true. Rosman says, Cenk, by your reasoning, forgive the past if it's politically motivated. You have brought up many people's past when it aligns with you. Inconsistent. No, that's why I tell you about the needle in the haystack. Is it the haystack or is it the needle? If they're looking for a needle in a haystack, they're looking to smear the person. So anyways, Gail Hefner says, fire and brimstone. I get why Cenk is animated and Anna's being the voice of common reason. Love you both, thank you. Lars Nilsson says, the UN resolution for a ceasefire was voted through today in the General Assembly. The countries that voted against should really contemplate what the phrase never again really means. That's a very good point. They continue with another good point. Perhaps UN should vote for a ceasefire between Anna and Cenk. Jacob Londono, thank you for the donation, we appreciate you. back on TYT. Jen Canana with you, but also new members Kevin Pilati and Ed. We appreciate you guys. You make this show possible, very literally. TYT.com/join or hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. I'm going to read one comment. Matthew the Celt wrote in, I just can't get through the day without some Kasperian sass. Anna Sasparian, you are marvelous. Also, I'm a Kasperian sectarian.
Oh my God.
Okay, now we're having a conversation. I kind of like that one. Sasparian, it's a little bit of a stretch.
No, I like Sasparian a lot, actually.
Okay, all right. But your religion being, your denomination being Kasperian sectarian makes a lot of sense. Okay, all right, what's next?
All right, well, Tucker Carlson, let's just get to it.
Would Tucker Carlson be on your list of potential VPs?
I like Tucker a lot. I guess I would. I think I'd say I would because he's got great common sense.
Oh, I know you get asked this all the time, but I mean, if asked, would you serve?
You're about to watch Tucker Carlson answer that question. Yes, we're gonna get to that, but I couldn't help but interject and just say that you're also about to watch Tucker Carlson engage in some of the most pathetic bootlicking I have ever experienced in my career. And that's saying something because there are a lot of bootlickers in this country, especially when it comes to Donald Trump. Now keep in mind, Tucker Carlson had a lot of negative things to say about Trump privately. We're gonna remind you of all of that in just a moment. But without further ado, let's watch.
Well, it's just so unimaginable. I mean, I haven't led a life that prepares a person for politics. As I said, I don't think I have any like horrible skeletons or anything. It's not that, it's just that that's not how my brain works. I've never done anything like that. I can't imagine spending time with politicians. I'm a total sucker for Trump. I think he's, personally, I get along with Trump really well. The closer I am physically to Trump, like if I'm with him in the room, I always love Trump. And I think it's impossible not to, and you know the experience. He's just charming, okay? And he's funny as hell, and he's brave in his way, I think.
I mean, have some dignity, man. But if I could just get closer to him physically. The closer I am to Trump, I can't get enough. I can't get enough of him. I love Trump so much. Okay, except when you're not in the same room as Donald Trump, and when it's not politically beneficial for you, you tell the truth about how you actually feel about Donald Trump. Now, because of the investigations since January 6th, we know what Tucker Carlson was texting to his colleagues about Trump. Let's give you a few reminders. We're all pretending we've got a lot to show for it, meaning supporting Donald Trump, because admitting what a disaster it's been is too tough to digest. But come on, there really isn't an upside to Trump. That is verbatim a text message that Tucker Carlson sent to his Fox News colleagues about Donald Trump. There's more. We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights. I truly can't wait. I hate him passionately.
Come on, I mean, look guys, the media and especially right-wing media filled with these liars. I mean, over the top liars. The minute that you turn off the cameras, I hate Trump. They turn the cameras back on. I want to be physically closer to Trump. I love him so much.
The physically closer, the better.
Yeah, come on,
relax.
Man.
By the way, he does slip up publicly time to time and disclose his true feelings about Trump because he once publicly said that Trump is a little bit autistic.
No, interesting.
Okay.
Wow. But on camera, he's brave in his own way, and he's just but the other part that I liked, Anna, is, me run for office? I can't imagine it. The thought has never even crossed my mind. God, we all know that you're thinking about it. God, there's such bad actors on top. Guys, at least demand better acting from your right-wing media.
I think I've just gotten to a point in my life where I'm allergic to the rampant dishonesty everywhere. All the bad faith garbage everywhere. All the self-interested narcissists who will lie to your face and be someone completely different behind closed doors. I'm so utterly sick of it. The last thing we need in politics especially is more figures who lie to your face and just do what they need to do to accumulate power for themselves. So Carlson isn't the only one on Trump's shortlist for vice president, by the way, and he's definitely not the only one who loves kissing Trump's ass. Let's watch.
Where's my husband? My husband's my second favorite man. I'm just putting it that way right now.
I spoke with President Trump earlier, and what I'm telling him every time I talk to him is he is a hero for America. He's a champion because he's the only one standing up against
How incredible is it when he says, I'm ready to go to jail for this country? I mean, it's so powerful.
It is overwhelming. It makes you feel emotional.
What we've seen over the last several years is the weaponization of the Department of Justice against the former president.
I love Trump, like as a person. I think Trump is funny and insightful. And I said this to Trump when he called me, all wounded about those texts.
I said he was the best president of the 21st century. That's what I said in the debate stage. I stand by it. George Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. It's not even close which one was the best one of the century. And so I respect him. And probably more than any other GOP presidential candidate, when I'm president, I will respect his legacy and honor it more than anybody else will.
Other names that are being floated as possible running mates for Donald Trump include Kristi Noem and JD Vance. I gotta say, and I talked about this earlier this week, if Trump were smart and wanted to think about a running mate that would give him the biggest advantage among the electorate, he would pick Nikki Haley, because Nikki Haley would absolutely crush Joe Biden if it was a one-on-one matchup. Obviously, Nikki Haley doesn't have a chance in hell in winning the Republican primary because of Donald Trump's massive lead. I don't know what Trump is gonna decide. Either way, we're doomed. Like that's where I'm at with that issue.
Yeah, look, I do want to discuss one more thing that happened between Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, and that was the discussion of potential violence if their beloved Trump is prosecuted. They demand that he be above the law, and if he's not above the law, they appear to be threatening consequences.
So we actually have that part of the conversation. Let's take a look.
If this Judge Chutkan in DC, this federal judge, because we assume Trump's gonna get convicted in that case. I mean, the smart bet would be this DC jury convicts him because they hate him politically. 92% voted for Joe Biden, and she hates him. That if she puts him in jail pending appeal before the election, the country's gonna burn. And then all this blowback, all these people say, oh my God, she's calling for violence. I'm not calling for violence, but there is no way the Trump base is not going to be beside itself with anger at that level of deprivation of being able to simply vote for the candidate of choice. That's what's being taken away here, like to your point.
Well, yeah, and speaking of violence, that's what you're gonna get. And speaking as someone who detests violence, and I've seen war, that's why I detest violence. So I spent a lot of my career trying to argue against more wars because I think violence is the worst thing. But I'm just being honest here. If you leave people no alternative, then what do you think is gonna happen?
So it's interesting because it seems to be like they're not calling for violence, but it seems as though they're excusing the possibility of that violence breaking out if things don't go the way the Trump supporters hope that it goes.
No, look guys.
I mean, come on.
It's obvious. So let me explain. They have plausible deniability. They technically said that they're not for violence, right? So I'm not saying that they didn't, you saw it with your own eyes. But when I give you the analogy, I hope it'll become clear. We were livid about how Bernie got robbed in so many different ways in 2016 during the Democratic primary, including claiming that the superdelegates had already voted when they didn't, funneling money to Hillary Clinton through the state parties. We gave all the different injustices, right? But at no point did we say, now if Bernie doesn't win, of course there would be violence, wink. Obviously there would be significant violence towards Hillary Clinton, wink, but we're not in favor of violence. We never said any of that, because it was absurd. Why would you do violence? What an absurd, that's not a rational reaction to a political dispute. But here, they're bringing it up like, you better not. And we're telling these people, I guess you have no choice left. We don't want violence, but if you were to touch our beloved, then I guess people would have no choice. They're triggering them, they're priming them to do the violence.
I just, look, at the very least, they are justifying the violence if and when it happens, right? It's, well, you know, if you're gonna go after Trump for the crimes that he may have committed, and he gets, you know, he's convicted of these crimes, well, then you have no choice. You're gonna have to deal with the violence that erupts as a result of that. No, how about there are consequences for your actions, both for Donald Trump and anyone who decides to engage in rioting or violence if they don't like the outcome of his cases. And by the way, like, what does this really mean? Like, to take a step back and take Trump out of it entirely and think about what they're really communicating. What they're communicating is our justice system should operate based on mob rule. Okay, who cares about the crimes that have been committed? Who cares if there was a fair prosecution? Who cares if the individual being prosecuted is convicted of those crimes based on the evidence that's been presented by the prosecutors? If the mob does not want that individual to be prosecuted and convicted, the justice system must listen to the mob.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And imagine if the other side did that. No, I mean, I guess you could convict Hunter Biden, but that would obviously trigger us attacking you and maybe killing you. But hey, I'm generically against violence, but I'm saying if you come after Hunter Biden, obviously we'd have to, people would have to resort to violence and maybe kill you. Like, no, that's not obvious. That's ridiculous. That's insane. Why are you even having that conversation? Last two things here. If you notice, whenever they talk about Donald Trump's criminal cases, they never talk about the actual evidence.
Of course not.
And they don't. So they don't
lose audience members.
Yeah, they don't say like, oh, here's the evidence here. Here's why he's innocent, and that's why this is wrong. They just say, well, obviously he shouldn't be prosecuted. Meaning our leaders should be above the law. And this is from the party that said that they were in favor of rule of law and law and order my whole life. Apparently they don't care about it at all. And the last thing is, they call against generic violence, but they don't call out that violence. Like, for example, if somebody on our side, and we've done polls that show Democrats are inclined in a certain direction, I say, do not ever do that. No matter how angry you are, do not ever do political violence. In this case, well, we're against violence and wars, but we understand, obviously, if the violence were to happen in this specific case. No, this is they're priming an audience already ready for violence according to the polling. And they're saying, you know what to do if they come after us. Let's go hurt them.
And look, the worst part about all of this, outside of what they're priming people for, is that they're doing it even though they themselves despise Trump. Even though Tucker Carlson clearly despises Trump based on the messages that we just read to you, right? I don't think Megyn Kelly's a huge fan of Donald Trump. They had a huge conflict in the beginning of the 2016 presidential election. He said some disgusting misogynistic things about her publicly, but it is beneficial to her career to parade around pretending as though she has no problem with Trump. It is beneficial for Tucker Carlson's career to pretend as though he doesn't absolutely despise Donald Trump, even though he does. And that's what bothers me the most, that they're willing to sell out the future of the country in order to get a little bit of short-term gain for their careers.
Yeah, there's almost no honesty in media. It's so dispiriting. Anna and I talked about it this morning. It's so frustrating. You see corporate media do hatchet jobs. You see right-wing media do this. Megyn Kelly was very right-wing when she was on Fox News. Then she mitigated her positions, went to NBC and pretended to be mainstream. Then when NBC let her go, for a while she continued to be a little bit moderate, although leaning right-wing, right? Mm-hmm. But now my guess is all of her audience is right-wing. So she's now serving that audience, and she's gone further and further right-wing and further pro-Trump, even though she used to hate Trump. Why? Because that's how she makes money now. You got to give them what they want. They want Trump, they want threats of violence. They don't care about the law, so you give them what they want. They like Tucker Carlson, and you know Tucker Carlson from the Fox News days. I'd be surprised if they were friends back then, but now all of a sudden he's on the show and they're all going in the same direction. And Tucker Carlson, a wild liar. I hate him. He says privately on the show, he says, I love him. Because that's who they are, man. They don't care about you. They don't care about the truth. For them, it's an acting gig. They're in entertainment. They're not in news. And they're like, okay, let's entertain people. Oh, you want violence and Trump and law breaking? Yes, we're in favor of that. Money, give me money, give me money. And so that's what you're seeing here, and it's sad, and that's what a lot of media in America has devolved to.
That's why Americans, depending on their political loyalties, I guess, live in alternate realities.
Absolutely. If you watch Megyn Kelly's show or Tucker Carlson's show, you have no idea what's actually happening. But to be fair, if you're a Democrat and you're watching cable news, you think numbers don't matter, and I can't get into all the things that the mythology that Democrats believe, but they've been told no, numbers and facts and science doesn't matter anymore. Whoever the leader is, we support them blindly. And so this is destroying the fabric of our country because no one's willing to call out their own side, be honest, and actually do news reporting. As you know from us, we don't mind commentary and perspective. There's nothing wrong with that. But you cannot play around with the facts, except almost everyone does. And it's so frustrating.
Yeah. All right, our bonus episode, we're gonna try to make it fun. We'll see how it goes. tyt.com/join to become a member. We're gonna talk about Trump's latest trading cards. We're also gonna talk about British slang words. They're fun. British slang words are, I think, more fun than what we have here in America. tyt.com/join.
Yep, Michelle Howard and Sophia Marlene, thank you. We appreciate you. We'll see you there.
I am willing to go to jail if that's what it takes for our country. Can't let that happen.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna, bonus episode, couple of fun stories for you.
Let's start with the latest round of Trump trading cards because yes, they are a thing and they do sell out.
Everyone, this is your favorite president, Donald J. Trump, with some very exciting news. My last two Trump digital trading card collections sold out in just hours. And now I'm back with my latest series called the Mugshot Edition. I wonder where that came from, the Mugshot Edition.
I mean, wow. So his latest round of trading cards features his mugshot. You really do have to be shameless to find a way to capitalize on your legal problems the way that Trump does. And he's got no shame. I mean,
no, look, I'm conflicted on it because I halfway respect the game, right?
Do you?
But like because this brother is willing to sell anything, right? There's some chance that if Truth Social goes bankrupt, as is possible now, according to reporting, that he'll be like, time to get the bankruptcy version. Okay, the special line of trading cards about how I went bankrupt for the 7th time, because he has no shame and he's just constantly selling. But the reason I'm conflicted is all that selling and he still went bankrupt 6 times. Like, he's good at marketing, terrible at everything else.
He's good at marketing and he's good at the one thing that no one really tells you need to have as a characteristic in order to really make it as a wealthy person in America, like a tremendously wealthy person in America, and that's shamelessness. Like, if I were prosecuted for whatever reason and there was a mugshot of me, I don't know, I would just be so deeply embarrassed by that. Like, the thought of using that mugshot to sell products and make money wouldn't even occur to me. And that's why I'm not rich, Cenk.
Yeah,
that's why I'm not rich.
So we're gonna tell you more about these trading cards. There's one that's super hilarious, but all of it is true, right? He's being tried for trying to coup against America with a fake elector scheme. I mean, it's just devastating. It's like and then he stole national documents. He paid hush money to a porn star, but he's got no shame at all. And so. The Apprentice is an excellent example of it, right? If they asked me to do Apprentice, I would have been a little reluctant, the one that he did. Why? Because his signature line at the end was, "You're fired." And I think that's actually really mean and not a good look, like sitting around and like bragging about firing employees. Like, that's like should be the most heartbreaking part of any job of someone who runs a company.
But Americans loved watching it happen.
Yeah, but they relished it. And I don't want to be the guy who's known for firing people with enthusiasm and like loving it. And so I would have probably hesitated. But he made $400 million from The Apprentice because he has no shame. He's like, oh, you need me to fire people and encourage others to get fired and humiliated publicly? No problem, I'm your guy. And to be fair to him, people watched it.
Now, these trading cards are digital trading cards, so you don't even get anything physical, and they cost $99 each. And believe it or not, while introducing the cards, he actually acknowledged that they don't really match up with his physical prowess in real life. So there's a moment of self-deprecation here, which I appreciate. So let's watch.
Some people call these cards pop art or modern art. I wish I looked as good as I do on those cards. That I can tell you. They give me muscles where, believe me, I don't have them.
Yeah.
No, you gotta give him props for that.
I know, that's actually the very best thing he has ever said.
We believe you. For the first time, we believe you.
No, because it's the first time I've ever seen this narcissist be self-effacing. And like in kind of a funny way. If he was like that all the time, that'd be a totally different person, right? But he's like, no, nobody's better than me at anything. No one knows nuclear weapons more than I do. Like, that's like annoying. I don't understand how the right wing doesn't find that grating. Who walks into a room, no one knows flowers better than me. No one knows plates and tables. But if he was like this all the time, he's like, I don't really have those muscles, but I like that they showed me that way. Hey, there you go, that's a human being.
Look, I think that appeal, I'm not saying, look, sometimes I feel like I have to explain this so people don't think I'm saying I like this. I don't like this. I think the appeal to that braggadocio or whatever is due to these men who they like alphas. They want to be alphas, right? And so they look at Trump and that's what they see. They see someone who's, puffing up his chest as this big alpha guy, but
yeah, no, you're definitely right.
Yeah. Now, many of the cards, by the way, say things like never surrender, which again, if you're using the mugshot, it kind of doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because you had to surrender to get that mugshot taken, but okay, whatever, it is what it is.
It was literally surrendering to authorities.
Yeah.
That's what it's called.
Which was the right thing to do.
Yes.
Okay, which was the right thing to do. But it gets better. If you buy all 47 trading cards, which will run you $4,653.
Don't.
He will send you a special treat.
47 all new stunning cards, and here is the best part. I'm doing two important things for my Trump collectors. For the first time, we're creating a real physical Trump card. Purchase 47 digital cards and we'll mail you a beautiful trading card. It is an authentic piece of the suit I wore when I took that now famous mugshot, and it was a great suit, believe me, a really good suit. It's all cut up and you're gonna get a piece of it. I'll be autographing some of them. A true collector's item. This is something to give to your family, to your kids and your grandchildren. With the purchase of 47 of the Trump digital trading cards, you will also be invited to join me for a gala dinner at my beautiful Mar-a-Lago, my home in Florida. You've perhaps heard of it. It's become a pretty famous place.
So notice that they're referring to it as Trump trading cards. They're NFTs because it's all digital. So you don't even have to buy it. You just hit up a homie who wasted their money on it and just get a copy of it, a digital copy of it. But okay, but look, these are people who love Trump so much. They just want to support him. So I think that's where this is coming from. Now, on the website, they say that the suit was authenticated by Mears, one of the largest authenticators of sports memorabilia. They apparently called the mugshot suit the most historically significant artifact in United States history.
Of course it is. But by the way, I mean, it's like, it's not, that's an outlandish thing to say, but there is some truth to the fact that it's a significant artifact, given that it's the first time a president was charged with a crime and brought to justice because he's such an unbelievable criminal. But yay, let's sell. It's like buying a piece of Al Capone's, forget Al Capone, Jeffrey Dahmer's suit. This is the outfit I was in when I cooked. Okay, so look guys, starting to sell your clothes that you already wore is like inches away from OnlyFans.
No, okay. That's a little unfair. I disagree with that. Look, we dislike Trump, so I get where you're coming from. But there are other celebrities. There are celebrities like, I'll give you an example. Like there are auctions of Marilyn Monroe's dresses and stuff like that.
Yeah, she's dead.
Oh, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
fair.
Like, yeah, she's been dead a long time, and that's a real memorabilia. I get it, right? Like
and
the one where the
dresses
winds
were so beautiful.
Yeah, that's totally different than Donald Trump was just wearing this. These panties could still be warm.
Okay. Yeah, it's disgusting. Okay. Finally. A clip I haven't seen yet. Apparently his sign off in that video was worth watching. So let's take a look.
Go to collecttrumpcards.com. Go right now and collect your own exclusive piece of American history, and we'll all have fun together. Have a good life.
Come on. No, I mean, he says things that are accidentally funny. He didn't mean it to be funny, but like, have a good life.
Okay. We'll all have fun together. Have a good life.
Remember, the suit's still warm. We'll all have fun together. Have a good life.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Who knew that I needed that story to lift my spirits?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, let's get to the UK and their slang, which is a lot of fun.
Yep.
Listen, I'm gonna keep it real. We do these kinds of stories because we all need a break. So during the holidays, this is the kind of content that people can watch. All right, so let's get to it. So slang from the United Kingdom, unsurprisingly, very different from slang here in the United States. But I'll also say that their slang, in my opinion, is a lot more fun. So we're gonna talk about the all-time weirdest British colloquialisms, which I just pronounced correctly, and I'm very proud of myself for doing so.
Nice job, Casper.
Thank you. Now, if you're wondering just how strange these phrases could possibly get,